Okay, this is section 6.2. This is part 4. We have been factoring trinomials. I want to factor x squared plus 4x plus 5. The first step is to see if you have a GCF. And there's nothing that divides evenly into all of these. I have 3 terms, so I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to a 5 and add to a 4. Okay, things that multiply to 5, well, the only 2 things we have are 1 and 5. Okay, 1 times 5 is 5, but 1 plus 5 is not 4, it's 6. Okay, well then, okay, what if I make this negative? 5 plus negative 1 is 4, but 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. There's no combination here that works. Okay, so what does that mean for us? The first thing we did is we factored out a GCF if we had one. We didn't have one. We got sent all the way down here. Do you have 3 terms? Yes. Don't worry about this yet. Our answer was no. Use the method in section 6.2. And then we got down to here. Were you able to factor out a GCF? No. Use factoring by grouping? No. Difference of squares or perfect square trinomial? We don't know those yet, but the answer is no. Or 6.2? No. We have a prime polynomial. That means this does not factor at all. It cannot be written as a multiplication problem other than putting a 1 or a negative 1 in front. Just like 5 is a prime number, the only way you can have a multiplication that ends up with 5 is 1 times that number. Okay? I stress the whole GCF thing because a lot of times after we factor out the GCF, if you cannot go further, people get confused and say it's prime. But if you can factor out a GCF, your answer is not going to be prime because you were able to factor out something. Here we can do nothing. Okay, so let's come up here and try this one. What makes this a little bit different is that you have this extra variable in here. It doesn't make a big difference on how you solve the problem. It makes a little difference on how you write your answer, but that's it. First of all, look for a GCF. This one doesn't have an x value. This one doesn't have a y value, so there's no variable that I can take out of all of them. This one has a coefficient of 1, so there's nothing really I can do. It doesn't have anything in common. So I pretty much ignored this y squared for a little while. I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to a 3 and add to a 4. Well, the only things that multiply to 3 are 1 and 3, or negative 1, negative 3. And they do add to a 4, so I'm going to use these 2 numbers. All right, so we need to be careful about how we write our answers here. We have to remember to take care of this y squared. It may help you when you see it to go ahead and circle it. It might help you remember to put it in your answer. What we do is take x. This is a positive 1, so plus 1. That's where I would end it if I didn't have this y squared in here. But since I do, I'm going to put the y in there. Times, we do the same thing. X, that's a positive 3. Stick a y on it. Okay? Now normally we would leave off the 1, but I wanted to make sure that you understood that it was there. This is the better answer. Think about multiplying these together. I'd have x times x, which would give me the x squared. And then when I multiply these 2 together, I would get the xy's. If I multiply these 2 together, I get the y squared. Okay, so let's try this one. A squared minus AB minus 12B squared. Again, we have this extra variable in there. We have to remember to take care of it. It won't make the problem much harder. Also remember that this is a negative 1 right there. Okay, so we don't have a GCF. There's no B here. There's no A here. These are 1s, so no GCF. I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to a negative 12, and I want them to add to a negative 1. Things that multiply to 12 would be 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Now I want to multiply to a negative, so that's some combination of a positive and a negative, which means I'm essentially subtracting. This will give me, if I'm subtracting 11 or negative 11, depending on which way, this will give me 4 or negative 4. This one gives me 1 or negative 1. Okay? And to get a negative 1, I should make this a negative 4. Double check your arithmetic. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. 3 plus negative 4 is negative 1. So this is going to work. Now go to your answer. A plus 3, don't forget to put in the B, times A minus 4, put in the B, and that should be your answer.